Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на ордів образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 858 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today's been a wild news day, and also it's the best night of the week. It is the Sunday fundraiser night, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as we've been able to hear that U.S. forces inside of Europe have been issued the order to go on high alert as an attack against U.S. bases and U.S. forces within Europe is expected to be imminent within under a week's time, although exact information has not been given about the possible threats of attack, who they will be, and where these attacks may occur. But we will be getting into that into greater detail here in a minute. We have also been able to get breaking news out of the area of Crimea that a major energy plant may have been hit by the Ukrainians inside the southwestern area or southeastern area of the Crimean Peninsula, possibly resulting in serious damage to the Russian logistical abilities coming to and from the Kerch Bridge area. We were also able to hear pretty wild and concerning news that in North Korea, 2 ballistic missiles were launched today as a part of North Korean, I guess you could say aggression, if you want to call it that. We have also heard of a Chinese rocket having a complete failure as they attempted to test a rocket, and then they actually ended up launching the rocket in a sort. We have also been able to hear out of the Middle East as well that tensions are continuing to rise as Hezbollah is now taking preemptive attacks against Israeli forces that are staging around the border area close to Lebanon, and at the exact same time we have also gotten impossible reports of explosions coming out of the city of Ashdod inside of the center area of Israel. Not only that, we've been able to get huge news today that Ukrainian forces have been successfully able to conduct a counterattack around the area of Cherny and push the Russians even further back than they were the other day, meaning that this Ukrainian offensive has entered a second wildly successful day of counterattacks and is once again showing us that the Ukrainian armed forces have a lot of fight left in them. We have an exorbitantly high amount of news to cover tonight, but of course, we do have to point out that tonight is also the Sunday night fundraiser as well, and we were able to pick an amazing nonprofit in the form of Nova Ukraine, a nonprofit that has been supporting Ukraine through and through for an incredibly long time. Nova Ukraine provides a great deal of humanitarian aid and medical assistance to Ukraine to help out not only the soldiers of Ukraine, but the common citizenry as well, which have been suffering greatly through the course of this war. Any support given to Nova Ukraine tonight on this fundraiser will help them massively in continuing to support Ukraine's rearward infrastructure and to help out in the war effort, making sure that Ukraine can continue to keep its eyes focused on victory in the war and making sure to outlast the Russian Federation. Support in these sorts and forms of nonprofits, it cannot be understated, as the importance of this is wildly significant. And I hope that tonight we are able to hit that $3,000 goal, because we've already hit nearly $700, and I'm sure that we will be able to hit that $3,000 goal by the end of it. But moving on from that, it is now time for us to get on into our major news within the area of Europe, particularly pertaining to U.S. forces that are stationed within the region. We were able to hear that the threat of attack, according to Next to TV today, is incredibly high against U.S. military bases. The source that was cited here in the Next to article was CNN, but we were also able to see that Fox News, as DCC Prime throws in 150, hey!
Let's go.
Wonderful to see. And Scott Stevens threw in a 50. Absolutely incredible. But nevertheless, we were able to see that this news was also reported by Fox News, MSNBC, and CBS, showing that apparently a U.S. Department of Defense official has notified all of them that apparently U.S. military bases in Europe are at a high threat of attack, at least in the upcoming week. They have said that this is the highest threat that has been seen over the course of 10 entire years, meaning that the last time that this was seen, or this kind of level of danger was seen in Europe for U.S. forces, was during the Donbass invasion by the Russian Federation in 2014, exactly 10 years ago to this day. This means that we're looking at a very tense situation in Europe, and while we have not been able to hear the exact information about who the attackers may be, we have been able to hear some very interesting statements made by U.S. commanders in the area, saying, informing U.S. military service members and their families at several bases within the continent to not wear their service uniforms in public, and that is no longer authorized for them to do, and that nothing should be worn that could identify those American service members as service members members or the dependent of an American service member while inside of Europe currently. We have also been able to get additional news, once again corroborating the fact that attacks are imminent, and we have been able to see that the United States military, the U.S. European Command Public Affairs Detachment, has been able to give an official statement on the matter just a few hours before we went live on air. The U.S. European Command is constantly assessing a variety of factors that play into the safety of U.S. military communities abroad. As part of that effort, we oftentimes take additional steps to ensure the safety of our service members. For operational security reasons, we will not get into specific measures, but we remain vigilant. As always, USUCOM advises personnel in the European theater to remain vigilant and stay alert at all times, including reporting suspicious activity, monitoring Department of State travel advisories, and implementing prudent personal risk mitigating measures. The safety and security of our military communities is paramount. Building a strong community of informed personnel who know where to report suspicious activity and how to avoid danger ensures our force can continue their important work. In consult with host nations, allies, and partners, and the interagency, USACOM constantly monitors the security environment to ensure its personnel are informed and best postured to assure the safety of their individual person, family, and loved ones. Very respectfully, the U.S. European Command Public Affairs. So it does seem as though there is a serious situation that is unfolding in the background. It appears that the United States Department of Defense is releasing very little information about the developing threat at the moment inside of Europe, but nevertheless, it does seem like this is one of the most serious issues that we have seen in 10 years, and it's been leading a lot of people, considering the complete lack of real information that we have at the moment about what this real threat is to U.S. forces in Europe. It's led a lot of people to come up with hypotheses as to what this threat may be and what the United States is getting prepared for. There are some very interesting comments that have been made that are giving us an idea that these attacks will not be on a conventional level. They will most likely be asymmetrical and, quite honestly, terroristic in nature. The statement that U.S. service members and spouses should not wear anything to identify them either as the spouses of U.S. service members or U.S. service members off base is showing us that they are scared that this attack will be coming from inside of Europe, inside of continental Europe, and most likely from people who are dressed as civilians. Most likely some sort of an insurgent force or something similar that would be conducting these attacks on U.S. forces. But there is still a lot of room to say who those insurgent forces might be and what kind of attack this really may end up forming into. And a lot of people are wondering if it's a Russian proxy that's planning the attack. Some people are saying that it may actually be an Iranian proxy or maybe an Iranian-backed group like Hezbollah that may be conducting some sort of an attack within the region, considering that tensions inside of Eastern Europe and also in the Middle East are incredibly high, and Europe is not that far away from either of them. And groups in the past from both regions have been seen to instigate issues and attacks inside of the area of continental Europe. A lot of people have had many different opinions on who these attacks may be coming from. The United States government seems to be very certain now is imminent and only a matter of time. And Matthew, what are people thinking? Do they think it would be a Russian-backed proxy or an Iranian-backed proxy, or do they think it would be someone else entirely different? And what do you think as well?
So it looks like 47% of the audience said it's Russia or one of their proxies planning an attack, while about 26% said it's Iran or a proxy planning an attack, and only 3% said it could be North Korea, and 23% said unsure, undecided, or other. And on this one, I will admit that this information today was a bit of a shock. I do see some people in the live chat saying, oh, they change that level all the time, and it's not a big deal. Well, this time they've changed it up to a higher level than usual for the first time in 10 years, so this is unusual. This is not the usual change in force status. So I'm not really sure where this could be coming from. I'm actually with the 23%. I'm going to take the cop-out option here. I'm going to say undecided because I'm really not sure who would be brazen enough to attack a U.S. base inside of Europe, because that would be quite extreme. And even if it is a proxy, that proxy can be linked back to the main country where that proxy is hosted, and that will ultimately lead to an escalation. So I'm going to wait and see what's going to happen with this. It's a bit of a shock. I'm not really sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm going to have to wait as well. It could be anyone at this point. We have such a little information. We do know that's going to be a plainclothes insurgent group. We could use another word, but YouTube doesn't really like it if we use it too much. So I can't really make a comment about the specific wordage, but it is going to be some kind of an insurgent group that is plain clothes that will be conducting these attacks. That's why they're saying that U.S. service members should not be wearing their uniform in public, because that would paint them as a target to these people. Going off of that, we have absolutely no idea who could be backing this group. It could literally be anyone. It could be the Russians, the Iranians. It could actually be the North Koreans. It could possibly even be other actors around the world that we wouldn't even really consider to be on the chart. It could literally be anyone at this point. So I'm actually going to have to withhold an opinion. I will say that there will probably be an attack. I'll be honest, though, it's probably not going to be within this next week, because usually those kinds of statements deter them from conducting the attack incredibly soon. Within the next week, they usually conduct it about a week or two after the window ends. So starting today, there's a 7-day period where the United States believes that this attack will happen. The attack will not happen during those 7 days. It'll happen at the end of 7 days, 7 days later, or maybe 14 days later. Because that's what we saw when the Russians said that there was going to be some sort of a major attack inside of the Russian Federation. You may remember this, Matthew. They said it was going to happen within the next week to a week and a half. That week and a half passed, and then a week and a half later, the Crocus City Hall incident occurred, and it resulted in a high casualty event, and was most likely the insurgent attack that the Russians were tipped off on. And so usually it deters them from conducting an attack during that time frame, and it happens a little bit afterwards. So I would say something will be happening probably inside of Europe. We have pretty good precedent already with the Crocus City Hall incident to believe that these kinds of attacks will happen. It's just that it's probably not going to happen within that week, and at the moment we have absolutely no idea who it could possibly be, and the United States Department of Defense seems to prefer that no one really has knowledge of who these people are, so that way the Department of Defense can make sure that they still think that they're largely under wraps, and that group isn't them, so that way they can continue to surveil them and make sure to try and keep track of their movements and actions that are going to be going on within the area of Europe. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And meanwhile, we've been able to hear that outside of Germany and outside of U.S. bases inside of Europe, we have been able to see that within the area of Asia, some incredibly interesting things have been happening as well. We were able to get news from the Yonhap News Agency today within South Korea that North Korea has launched 2 missiles. One short-range ballistic missile and another ballistic missile of an unknown type were fired off today into, I believe, the area around, and let me make sure I get the name correctly, the Sea of Japan. We do not know a lot about these specific missiles, their make, or their success rate of being fired, but nevertheless, it is once again creating a never-ending, very tense, and very strenuous situation within the area of the Sea of Japan, and really the entirety of East Asia. We are assuming that the North Koreans are continuing to do this as a part of their positioning with the Russian Federation to try and create large diplomatic incidents within the area of East Asia to draw attention into the region, and not only that, draw U.S. forces and resources into the area as well, possibly diverting them from further Ukraine support or further support into other regions around the world. Meanwhile, moving on out of the North Korean news, we have also been able to hear that within the area of China, there has been an interesting thing that happened today. Now, I did not track down and geolocate the exact spot that this happened in, because to be quite honest, I added this marker like 7 minutes before we went live, so I didn't have time to geolocate it and everything and be able to make sure that our marker location is accurate. But we were able to see that the Chinese were conducting a brand new rocket motor test today for one of their rockets that will be used in the future in the Chinese Space Agency, which is one of the largest ones in the world nowadays, actually. It's right near Roscosmos and NASA, or SpaceX, which, funnily enough, is really the only civilian-led one that's getting to any kind of a major scale or size. But nevertheless, we did get to see that the Chinese attempted to conduct a little bit of a rocket engine test today, and it looks as though, although we don't get to see the very start in this clip, it went a little wrong. This thing is not supposed to be lifting off. It's actually supposed to be anchored down to the test pad that it's lifting off from. But it ended up taking off anyways, and now it's actually going to start going into flight. It's a little interesting to see, and what's even more interesting is that this is being filmed from a village that is about maybe a half kilometer to a kilometer away, which for my American viewers, 1 kilometer is about 0.7 miles, or really 3/4 of a mile. That would be about the best approximate that I could give. But here is the clip of the rocket test failure. I'm not gonna lie, man, for this thing to have absolutely no stabilizers or anything on it, it's literally just a tube filled with propellant, it was actually fairly stable, at least at the start.
Man, what's it doing in the air like that, though? I thought it was a static test.
Man, well, they didn't tell you that the static test also involved a test of its flight abilities. But there it goes. Oh. Looks like it may
it's
have
working
run out.
good.
I think the test has ended in success, Mandy. I think they understand that the motor's working.
They sound like that guy said, "Damn."
烧着下来了。咦，看看这他挪到哪来啊？
你往旁边看。
Why does the woman sound like a gremlin, man? Like she's like.
I was about to say the same thing. Sound like a gremlin. Like man, I don't know what she sounded like, but that sounds crazy.
Dude, she's sitting back there going.
We might be able to get a lot of cover.
it's like I don't know about this, but we can see it now free falling back to the ground. Oh, and it's a sight.
Ay, ay, ay.
Oh my
God.
lord.
Man, can you imagine, like, they must have not had that thing clamped down worth of crap, because you typically have to clamp those down a lot, because that's a lot of thrust coming behind that rocket motor like that, even during a static test, to my understanding. And apparently, whatever the Chinese were using to hold that thing down, it must have just snapped free like Godzilla and took off, because, and right next to all the residential places as well, which is insane.
Dude, it's literally near a populated town. Like, that's the crazy thing about what goes on in China, is that in America there's a pretty big area around our rocket launch sites, like at Cape Canaveral in Florida, where people just aren't. Like, look, this is the closest populated settlement right here to the area of the Cape Canaveral launch sites. Here are some of the launch pads right here that rockets are launched from. Now, what's crazy about that is that those are actually a considerable ways away from really any populated area. The closest they get is about 11 miles away, so it's a pretty good distance. This is clearly maybe just a mile away or a little bit less than that in this video. Absolutely insane that they would take those kinds of risks, but also look at the secondary explosion right here that happened as well.
Jeez. And that thing was full of rocket fuel. Like, it had a lot to go based on those explosions.
Wait for the boom.
You know, this is like the grown-up equivalent, like the advanced, like, scientific way of putting air in a balloon and letting it go in a room, and it goes like all over the place. This is like the adult equivalent.
Man, I could just see some people, like in this town being like, dude, I think it wasn't a good idea to move close to the space program. It's this thing is flying off into space. It's like, that did not turn out well. Of course, it's a bit of an embarrassment for the Chinese government. Interestingly enough, we haven't seen them try to wipe or heavily censor the footage. It's actually kind of flowed out there pretty easily today, but it is always a funny thing to see an absolute failure like that. Sometimes, well, I'll have to be honest, rocketry failures usually happen quite commonly, as a matter of fact. That's one thing that a lot of people are very ignorant about. Like, they'll watch a SpaceX Starship get blown up because something went wrong with it and they self-destructed in air, and then people go, oh, look, it's a failure. Almost every single rocket that is ever tested ends up having to be remotely detonated until its final product. A lot of them end up actually having remote detonations when they're actually used in their final form. It's usually a common thing to occur, but the fact that this one is not an actual rocket that's being tested at actual flights or launches, and it was supposed to be a rocket motor test, and the thing detached itself from the ground and went flying away, that is a little concerning, and showing that the Chinese Space Agency may have a pretty long ways to go in safety concerns. And they also might want to move the launch sites away from the area around, you know, I don't know, maybe like the populated cities that are just sitting around the launch sites. Maybe they'd want to move them away from that. But, you know, it is what it is. I guess the Chinese will just never really learn. They probably won't improve the safety too much, but, you know, we'll wait and see. Well, I don't have a lot of hope, though. But moving on out of China and on into the area of Israel, we have been able to get some unconfirmed reports of explosions in Ashdod. We were not able to confirm these, and it appears that the post has been deleted, maybe confirming that that's incorrect entirely, but there was at least some sort of a report of explosions in Ashdod. We were not able to confirm those reports with picture or video evidence, so we have to say that there is no confirmation of the claims. There was just the report that there were explosions, and that's absolutely all we got. But we will be waiting to see if we get any additional information or video and picture evidence on that matter to see what we can find and see what we can extrapolate out of the possible explosions that may have happened in Ashdod. Meanwhile, moving up into the border region in the northern area of Israel, right along the Lebanese border, we were able to see that Hezbollah is actually starting to target IDF forces that are beginning to stage in the area of the border region. We can see that they were actually attacking Merkava and Namer APCs today, and we can see that they're putting up that normal Hezbollah intro.
Man, there's the AK-47 front end with a red ball next to it. You know, like follow the bouncing ball when somebody's talking. I said, let's lower the healthcare costs.
Dude, it's that radical Islamic 7-Up logo right there. Like it's like just like, would you like a soda?
Decaf.
And we can see them firing. And we can see the missile making its way towards the FOB, where we can see a couple of Merkava Mark IVs and a Namer APC right over there behind the Merkava. And we can then see the plume from the explosion hitting the Merkava Mark IV. And we see what appears to be a second missile that was now launched that is making its way into the base. And it appears that it's now hitting a Namer APC that was parked near the Merkava. We can see a plume from that explosion as well. And while they were hitting the vehicles, I don't believe we got a lot of proof that they were actually damaged moderately or destroyed. So from what we know, they hit the vehicles, caused some damage. We don't know if the vehicles were knocked out or destroyed. We just know that they were able to confirm the hits, and that's it. Literally, that's all we have. But it does appear that things are beginning to brew up in Hezbollah. Instead of moving into the area of the Litani River, they're continuing to stay within a large area of southern Lebanon, and they're also starting to conduct preemptive attacks against the Israeli forces that are building up in preparation for a ground invasion into the region of Lebanon, which is showing us that the Hezbollah forces do not plan on leaving the region anytime soon, do not plan on ceasing hostile actions, are in fact largely goading the Israeli armed forces into an advance into the area of Lebanon. We are also starting to get a little bit of word that there was another interesting event that happened today that I did not put down on the map, but I heard, and I was like, well, that's just a little stupid. We heard that there was a very large celebrity, a fairly significant one, many of y'all would know, who got in a bit of controversy a while ago because of some of the statements he was making, and then they took him off someplace, and then he came back out, and he was just a weirdo in a different form. But the guy ended up going to the Russian Federation today. He's also known for having some relations with someone called Kim Kardashian. This guy in particular is Kanye West. And Kanye West has actually ended up taking a trip today to the Russian Federation. Not the first trip he's taken many mentally, but this is the first one we've seen him physically take in quite a while. And James Hughes throws in a $200 donation.
Let's go!
Damn! And we're up to 2.1 nearly. We're $900 away from the fundraiser goal, baby! But nevertheless, we are hearing that Kanye West has arrived in Moscow in the Russian Federation today. And a lot of people have been throwing in a lot of interesting opinions about Kanye West and his arrival in Russia, and the fact that an American citizen was able to travel to the Russian Federation at all in the first place, which is a very interesting thing. Many people are saying that Americans should be banned from the Russian Federation. They should be banned from visiting, and that U.S. travelers that are attempting to reach the Russian Federation should not be allowed to leave the United States and should not be permitted to enter the Russian Federation. Other people are saying that no, Americans can go wherever they want, even if we are in a very tense situation with the Russian Federation. They should have the freedom to travel outside the United States and around the world. Some people are saying that it depends on the circumstances, and others are saying that they're a little bit unsure, undecided, or other. And a lot of people are having many different opinions on this. And Matthew, what are people really thinking? Do they think that Ye should be able to go to the Russian Federation, or are they thinking that he shouldn't have been allowed to in the first place? What are they thinking, and what are you thinking about it?
All right, so after hearing allegedly that Kanye West visited Russia, allegedly also on a visit for a birthday of some Russian official or someone in Russia, the question is, should Americans be banned from visiting the country as a whole of Russia? So 45% said yes, ban Americans from Russia, while 34% said no, people can go where they want, and 15% said it really depends on the exact circumstances. And on this one, I got to say, it's really quite crazy to see an American that is, I'm not sure if they support Russia or not, but to be going there while they're invading a sovereign country and actively trying to war with the West is a bit out of touch, to put it in a very understated way. I will say personally, in my personal opinion, obviously you can think what you want about the guy, he seems a bit nuts. That's my interpretation of it. He seems a little bit off his rocker, but nonetheless, like even if he is off his rocker, that's still reckless to go to Russia, and it probably should not be allowed, in my opinion. In this case, I would say probably do not let Americans go to Russia. That's a foreign country, which is an enemy, and if people end up somehow going there anyway, they should be scrutinized when they get back to make sure there's no funny business going on with any spy activity. Not saying he's a spy, but we should always be cautious when people come back from foreign countries that are enemies of the state. So to me, I'm with the 45%. But I also want to say that I miss the old Kanye, the get up from the go Kanye. You know, the real
Get the
Kanye.
hell out of
We
here.
need that one. We need that one back because this current one's a crazy mess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm not really a big fan of any Americans going to the Russian Federation. I actually saw someone say, well, we're not at war with Russia. We weren't at war with the Soviet Union either, but I don't really think we allowed a lot of Americans to travel to the Soviet Union very freely most of the time. I'm not really that big of a fan of it. Similarly to, I'm not a big fan of Americans traveling to North Korea or the Russian Federation. If they want to go, they assume the risks. I would say that Americans should be allowed to go into the Russian Federation on very limited circumstances, with specific intentions, and of course the United States understanding what those intentions are. But if you ever go into the Russian Federation as an American citizen, you should know that the United States is not going to come and help you if you get in trouble inside of Russia. It is an openly unfriendly and hostile country to the United States of America, and so if you're an American citizen traveling there, the United States, the Russian government will probably do everything they can to make sure that they trap you inside of Russia and then use you as a bargaining chip for the United States government. Now, I am not a fan of leaving American citizens to possibly rot in foreign prisons, but if you put yourself in a stupid situation and then you get a stupid result out of it, the United States doesn't have to put itself as a nation in a stupid situation to try and get you back out of that prison. So I would have to say, I'm not really a big fan. I believe that the United States should only permit passports to be approved for travel to the Russian Federation in very limited instances, and beyond that, travel to Russia should be forbidden. And otherwise, if that's not the case, then everyone who goes to Russia better assume that there will be risks. There will be a huge amount of risks in going into Russia, and the United States is not going to be there to help you. That should be obviously very clear, because I say that American citizens should always be able to travel around the world knowing that the U.S. government is behind them every single step of the way, and that they will support and help out every American citizen no matter what, no matter the cost. If they're in a difficult situation and it's not by their doing and it's because of some bad actors around the world, we have every single right to defend those citizens and make sure that nations and people around the world live in fear of treating American citizens poorly. But if an American citizen does something that is deliberately stupid, like traveling to Russia or North Korea, like, I'll be entirely honest, like Otto Warmbier, and then you rip down a propaganda poster on film, and then you end up getting your brain scrambled while you were planting apple trees, there's not really a lot that America could do in that kind of a situation. You kind of assume the risks of what would happen to you if you did something wrong in North Korea when you decide to travel there, when the Department of State said that travel into North Korea was extremely bad as an idea. And we also say the same thing right now about the Russian Federation. So if you go into the Russian Federation and you do something stupid, like you piss on a statue of Putin and then you get your brain scrambled, I don't really think the American government needs to be there to act like that was an unfortunate thing and who could have ever seen that coming, because you had to have been pretty stupid in the first place to go to Russia given the current situation. That would be my opinion. And also,
I don't think they're going to keep Kanye over there. I don't think Russia's going to take him prisoner personally, because I'm not saying this is a joke, but seriously, Russia does not want him as a prisoner, because Kanye is, he's popular in America, but he's not as significant as, let's say, taking a political prisoner, because he's going to be over there causing havoc. Like, even if he was in prison, he's going to have a lot of people making a lot of noise if he was locked up, and he probably won't remain over there too long if he was locked up, because of all the chaos that will be started because of it. So I don't think they're taking him. They'll let him come back because they don't want to keep him.
They don't want to keep him. Also, he's too big of a celebrity, so he probably arrives to Russia, does his thing, and then leaves. Especially if he doesn't do anything crazy. But
Damn!
dang,
David
Romano
Damn!
throwing a 700, and we are almost at the goal. We are $175 away from the fundraiser goal right now. That is absolutely freaking crazy. And David Romano is killing it. Oh my lord, that is nuts. That is actually insane. And we are so close to the fundraiser goal, y'all. Just a little bit more, and we will be over the top, and we will have hit the goal. But beyond that, I will get back to talking about Kanye really quickly. Now, of course, I don't talk about people on their political standings. And of course, like everyone nowadays, which is such an annoying thing to have to say, almost everyone in America has ended up trying to become a political figure of some sort. And I'm sure that many of you all know that Kanye hasn't. Oh my God! Hal Rose throwing a 333. We hit the goal, baby! Let's go! I cannot believe it. We have hit the fundraiser goal of $3,000 in 43 minutes. Absolutely insane. We're now at $3,157 on the fundraiser. That is truly insane, and a huge shout out to everyone who was involved in this fundraiser tonight and has helped it to get to that point. Absolutely incredible and beautiful to see. But before we move on from the whole Kanye thing and getting back to what I was saying, Kanye is a bit of a political figure, as many of you all know, and I have to give this whole entire disclaimer to let y'all know I'm not going to be talking about this person's particular politics. I'm just going to be talking about my assessment of them as an individual. And I would have to say that my assessment of Kanye is that he has some kind of a mental issue, just putting that out there quite frankly. He's said some very weird things in the past. Many of y'all may know that he almost went on to like this anti-Semitic, like, almost KKK style rant for like months on end a while ago, and then he disappeared for a while, came back, and I think he said something like he had found Jesus or whatever, and then he did that for a few months, and then I think he disappeared for a little bit again, and then he reappeared and said he was going to start opening up an adult film company, and do a whole bunch of other crazy stuff. And now he's going to Russia. So I would have to say the guy is all across the board. It's something that I would have to say it's a little bit unfortunate to see, because I think the guy was fairly normal a long time ago, but he's not really now. So, you know, if you're going to say anything about him traveling to Russia in particular, it's just kind of like a crazy person traveling around the world. There's not really that much to look into it, but the fact that an American citizen is traveling to Russia in the first place, it does bring up some questions. And considering that he's such a high-profile person, and it came into such big light today that Americans are traveling to Russia, it started to make it a conversation. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I see a lot of people saying a whole bunch of things. Oh man, and I actually saw it.
I'm just trying to get with the fact I didn't hear that piece of news. I'd heard the thing he'd gone on a rampage for a while, sitting there talking about. Hold on, let me get rid of this one person right here. There we go. I had heard for a while that he'd said he'd found Jesus, but the part about opening the adult film studio right after that—that's like what? It's like what the hell is going on, man? That's crazy.
Man, yeah, it's wild, man, because I remember, because I don't really dwell in the celebrity world at all. I don't know any news about celebrities or really who anyone is. A celebrity could walk up to me in my face. I probably have no clue who they were. But Kanye West is one I know, because the whole anti-Semitic rant that he did for months on end was a very, very popular thing online, because it was absolutely crazy. People were like, oh my God, look at what he said today. And he ended up losing all of his sponsors, all of his backers, all that kind of stuff for those reasons. And then he disappeared, and then he came back, as I'm sure you know, Matthew, and then he was like, I found Jesus, I'm going to be following the ways of the Lord and all that. And then he disappeared again, and then he came back out. And then he said, and I'm not going to go into explicit detail on air, of course we can't, but I'll tell you what I heard, that apparently he came back out and he said, it's going to be so much fun. I'm going to open up an adult film company. I'm going to be the main star in every video. And I was like, no way. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And it was a legit thing that he actually said. And so,
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So next thing you know, he'll be moving on to something else, who knows? But, when you have someone that's that unstable, that they're literally hopping from one end of, like, the ideological field to the next from each month, can you really put a lot into what they do? Not really. It's kind of like putting a lot into what Steven Seagal does. He's clearly mentally ill. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are now going to be moving on into the area of Ukraine, because we actually have a lot of news to cover inside of the Ukrainian battlefields. But before we do, I do want to make sure really quickly that we do cover a little bit of additional information, a little bit of additional news about what has been done on this channel tonight. We've hit $3,500 nearly on this fundraiser right now, just 45 minutes in, which is absolutely insane. And I gotta say that is truly unbelievable to know that this channel has been able to raise $3,500 in such a short amount of time. And we are going to be making sure that we are going to be recognizing all of those top donors that have been able to make this fundraiser possible tonight to be able to get to these heights. Of course, we can't recognize every single person who has been able to support the fundraiser tonight, because there are so many of y'all, but we will be recognizing some of those who put in the largest amounts of support in the night. But I do want to thank everyone, whether we're able to call out your name or not, for supporting this fundraiser and helping it to continue to be able to do so much good for Ukraine. Every single one of y'all, whether the donations be small or whether they be large, all add together to make the total that we see tonight. If it wasn't for the hundreds of people who threw in $5 donations, about half of the fundraiser totals that we see every single weekend would not be seen. Y'all are as important as the top donors, but there are so many of y'all that sadly, if we called out the top donors and every other donor, we would never be able to get through the entire list. But Matthew, give us a quick little readout of the top donors of tonight's fundraiser, because they have been doing incredible work tonight, along with everyone else.
All right, so the top donors of the night thus far. The biggest one of the night is David Romano, who put in that $700 donation. Absolutely massive. We also had a $333 from Hal Rose, as well as a $200 from John B. Rempel, as well as a $200 from James Hughes, and then a $150 from DCC Prime 1, and then we had a $100 from some guy called The Enforcer, as well as a $100 from Old Warrior. Hal Rose once again, along with Carl Patterson, who put in a $75, and a John B. Rempel, who put in a $50, along with Scott Stevens, Jorge Lopez, Axel K, Dad Good, Barry Woodward, James Dunn, LSA Brigadier General, Tony Huang, and also John C. And a huge shout out to everybody who's donated tonight, because we're now up to $3,455 on the fundraiser, and that is tremendous to see. Going to a great cause, which is Nova Ukraine, and huge shout out to all, even if we weren't able to call you off. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say a huge thanks and a massive shout out to every single one of y'all who we were able to call out, and the folks that were not able to call out as well. I know I went over this just a moment ago, but we cannot stress this and thank y'all enough for all of the massive support and the massive donations that y'all continue to give to these nonprofits, so that way they can keep working in Ukraine like they have been since day one. All of y'all combined have done an incredible service for Ukraine for 858 days straight, without end, without ceasing. It is unrelentless. It is as unrelentless as the pushing forward of the Ukrainian forces that continue to fight and resist the Russian Federation's attempts to take over and control Ukraine every single waking day. Y'all's efforts are as long-lasting as many Ukrainian soldiers' efforts are on the front line. And while y'all's is a little bit underplayed out there in the big sphere, it does add up to make such a substantial difference out there on the front lines of Ukraine today. And that actually brings up a little bit of an unfortunate bit of news that we did want to bring up, because we've seen so many people saying in the live chat today, and of course it's taken the Ukraine war community by shock on YouTube, considering that this person had been known by really everyone, and everyone, including ourselves, knew of the guy, and we made a comment, I think a couple of times, on some of the things that he has said. And of course, many of y'all will know exactly who I'm talking about by just saying this. Pete the Medic, who has been on YouTube quite a substantial bit over the past few years and has been a volunteer in the Ukraine war, sadly died today on the battlefield and sustained fatal wounds from artillery fire, and died quite suddenly in an unknown frontline area in Ukraine just today. We do have to say, that we have known about Pete the Medic for quite some time. We have not really gotten to know the fellow personally, but we have every once in a while made comment on a thing or two that the guy has said, sometimes agreeing, sometimes disagreeing, but nevertheless, it is incredibly unfortunate to hear of a brave defender, a foreign volunteer that's been helping and supporting Ukrainian forces really since the very beginning of the war, passing away today. It always reminds us, of course, the endless sacrifice that is given not just by foreign volunteers, but the Ukrainian citizenry themselves as they continue to heroically make their stand each and every day, with some of them, of course, giving the ultimate sacrifice like Pete the Medic did today, in passing away on the front lines due to Russian enemy action. It's something to note, in my opinion, that Pete the Medic was known on YouTube quite a significant amount by really everyone. And his loss is severely felt, tremendously felt, by many people who either knew him by watching his videos or many people on YouTube who had personal dealings with him. But it's very important to remember that Pete the Medic is one person, and there are many incredibly sad and unfortunate stories that happen every single day that impact people far worse than anyone's being impacted on YouTube right now, to Ukrainian families and citizens who are waiting for their fathers and their mothers to return home, and they never do because they meet a similar fate like Pete, trying to heroically defend their own people, their own families from the Russian aggression that is currently ongoing in eastern Ukraine. I think it's always important, especially with times like these, while we keep a very high pitch and high stepping, high tone kind of a nature on this channel, to always remember that war is an incredibly brutal thing, and there's always a very sad and unfortunate reality that's always going on behind the scenes, behind all of this fervor and support that we have for the Ukrainian cause and the Ukrainian nation. There is always a significant amount of suffering, so that way the Ukrainian flag can continue to fly another day, and that the Ukrainian nation can continue to persevere against all odds and continue to face down the evils of the world in true physical form. I would once again have to say that it is incredibly unfortunate to hear that Pete the Medic has passed away, and while we have disagreed with him in the past on one specific statement, which did end up making some rounds, I absolutely hate to hear that someone who was united in the common cause of supporting Ukraine and defending them against Russian aggression and supporting Western interests, unfortunately died of his wounds today on the battlefield. But I did want to make sure.
Also, I just want to say as well on my part, rest in peace to Pete the Medic as well on my side, because even though, like the Enforcer said, we didn't know him personally, he was doing good work for Ukraine, and of course that has to be applauded. And he ultimately took the ultimate sacrifice by giving his life in service of Ukraine. So he helped out in the most ultimate way possible. Condolences to his family as well, and also rest in peace to the guy, because he did really good work.
And so with that, I hope we were able to address that fairly well. And in the meantime, we actually have a couple of questions that we can answer from the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So, also, by the way, I want to say this because we only have about 9 live chats right now. If you have a question for us tonight, we do not have any super chats because, of course, it's fundraiser night. So, if you have a question for us, put @EnforcerMatt in the chat and then your question behind it, and we'll add it to our spreadsheet. But our first one tonight is going to go to AF Kaplan, who says, regarding the U.S. forces in Europe being placed on high alert, do you think this is Russia and Iran coordinating?
I would say Russia and Iran coordinating. I'll reread that one again really quickly so I can hear what they're coordinating on.
He said, regarding the U.S. forces in Europe being placed on high alert, do you think that this is Russia and Iran coordinating?
Most likely not. Usually these groups conduct attacks independently on their own, furthering their own cause. Because if the Russians and the Iranians collaborate together to conduct this attack, it's not furthering anyone's goals, really, because it's too wide of a spread. Iran would be supporting this attack, this possible insurgent attack. That's the best wordage that we can give on YouTube that's allowed. But many of y'all will know the exact kind of wordage that we're wanting to give. It's been a very common word over the past 20 years. It's the kind of wars that we've been conducting in the Middle East. We say that they're a certain war and a certain kind of a concept of warfare, but we can't say the word on YouTube. But nevertheless, insurgent actions or something that has to be done by a specific country with a specific goal. And if both of these countries team up, the Russian Federation and Iran, which have two completely different objectives to conduct this attack, that means that this attack will not really result in anything that positive for either side or really get a message across. It would really just be an attack for the sake of it. Because if Iran wanted to conduct, say, an insurgent attack inside of Europe, they would conduct the attack and they would make sure that it's clearly known that this attack is happening because of what's happening in the Middle East. And if they want attacks to stop in Europe, they'll stop what Europe and the United States is doing inside the Middle East. If it was the Russian Federation, the attack would be conducted with a clear message behind it that this attack is being conducted because of Western support for Ukraine. And if they want attacks like this in Europe to stop, the West should stop supporting Ukraine. That would be the kind of aim that each country would have. But if they team together, there's not really a clear message being sent. It's just the West must stop. And it doesn't really make it clear what they need to be stopping. It's just that they need to stop. And then the message is so unclear. The attack is just instigatory. It's incredibly provocative. And that's it. And it doesn't really further anyone's side and possibly instill a mindset of terror, which is the kind of act that we believe will be happening in the populace, either of the U.S. service members in Europe, the U.S. public here in America hearing the news of the attack on U.S. service members, or amongst Europeans themselves, to put government pressure onto their own administrative officials to stop some kind of support or actions in different areas of the world. So I don't think they team together. I think it's going to be an independent attack by an independent state actor, if that's a good way to put it. That sounded so political. Let me try and reword that. It is going to be an independent attack by one country or the other, not both of them at the same time, at least in my opinion. But I could, of course, be proven wrong. But that would be my assumption at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question here is actually going to be the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J., Rumpelstiltskin, and David Millsaps. They said the Morse code decipher tonight is U.S. forces are on high alert, and let's hope that we do not see an attack occur in the week. And also, long live the LSA.
And that is the sound of money, and y'all got that down on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all for getting that correct on this 858th day of the war. Really crazy to think y'all have been getting it correct that long, and I do pray that we do not see an attack on U.S. forces inside of Europe anytime soon. It would, of course, be incredibly unfortunate to hear. It would be a lot like the attack that occurred on U.S. service members at Aut-Tamph at Tower 52 that led to the death, I believe, of 3 U.S. service members. It would be wildly unfortunate and, of course, enraging for the American public to hear and also for the U.S. Armed Forces as well. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for deciphering that Morse code message and always being the Morse code deciphers. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the Ukraine war news itself.
All right, and also in the meantime, a huge shout out to D. Menard, who put in a $200 donation to the fundraiser and brought us up to $4,052 raised, which is tremendous. And huge shout out to Menard for that. And we also see here a question, the last one in the segment, goes to Space Cat, who says, will the Patriot missile systems that Israel is thinking of sending to Ukraine, will that be enough to cover most of their country?
Possibly it would, but the thing is that we already know the Israelis are not going to be sending those systems to Ukraine. We already heard that they're planning to demolish the systems inside of Israel instead of sending them forward anywhere. And that information came out about 2 months ago. So yes, they would.
Well, I've got a new news for you though, because Israel's currently in negotiations with the United States to, instead of scrap those, they're potentially going to send, I think it was up to 8 of them to Ukraine, pending the result of negotiations between the U.S. and also Ukraine.
Really?
So there is a pretty high chance that they will end up going to Ukraine. But the catch is they're about to scrap them, and why are we having to negotiate to get them if Israel is about to get rid of them? I get the fact Israel wants to raise some funds, but hopefully they're not like trying to get full value for them, because they were about to get rid of them anyway. But I guess in the end, all that matters is they get to Ukraine. But some funny things in my opinion with that.
Interesting. I actually did not hear that news. I heard about negotiations from Ukraine today with the United States about possibly allowing strikes deeper into Russian territory with Western weaponry, but I did not hear that there were also negotiations going on in between Israel and America about the fate of their patriots. So going off of that, and now updating that, sorry about that, y'all, I was incorrect and outdated on the information. But now going off of the fact that Israel is negotiating, yes, 8 Patriot systems would be probably very effective inside of Ukraine. Each Patriot system has a range of about 110 miles in a radius, meaning that they would cover a very large area, and that does mean that 8 of them would be able to cover a massive swath of Ukraine. So yes, 8 Patriot systems would probably be able to cover the remainder of the Ukrainian airspace that currently does not have an active Patriot system inside of it. So I hope that that does address that incredibly well. Good question, and thank you, by the way, Matthew, for correcting my misinformation there. While LSA Rocks throws in the 50. Hey! And that got us up
that's what I'm talking about.
to $4,100. Pretty wild, man. $4,100. That is $1,100 above the goal. But still, I hope damn. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, I've seen a lot of people talking about something else that was very interesting today. A little bit of a minor incident, but showing the diplomatic situation in the Middle East currently. A lot of people heard today that an Israeli aircraft ended up landing inside of Turkey to refuel in their country. The reason why they landed, while LSA Rocks throws in another $100 donation, bringing the fundraiser up to $4,200. Absolutely incredible. But an Israeli aircraft, a passenger plane, landed inside of Turkey today because a person on board had a medical emergency, and therefore they had to conduct an emergency landing within Turkey to get these people to medical aid. Once the aircraft was on the ground, the Israeli aircraft requested refueling, and the airport refused to refuel the aircraft, forcing the Israeli plane on low amounts of fuel to take off from Turkey and then just continue on to Israel, where it would finally land at an airport and get refueled. This incident, while possibly not showing the actual representation or interest of the Turkish government, has caused a decent amount of outrage today in the really in the international world that's been able to hear the news about what happened with that aircraft today. And a lot of people are saying that the Republic of Turkey as a whole should be punished for this incident that happened at the airport today with the Israeli aircraft. I don't know what kind of punishment we would be seeking to instill on the Turks for this, whether it be economic sanctions or some sort of diplomatic sanctions. I'm not entirely sure. But some people are saying that it's not really that serious. Some people said only if it continues, then yes, they should. And others are a little bit undecided. But I would like to make a reminder to everyone, and Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong on this, because this was the last I saw, the Turkish government has not made any official statement on whether they supported or condemned the action that was taken by airport officials today in reaction to the Israeli aircraft landing there. So we do not really know at the moment, at least I don't, the official Turkish government stance on that incident. So this may not be representative of the Turkish government and their interests or wishes when in dealing with Israeli commercial aviation. But a lot of people are still throwing in their opinions. And what are people thinking about it, Matthew? Do they think that Turkey should be punished for this or not? And what are you thinking about it as well?
So I will say real quick, it is true that local workers were the ones that refused to refuel the El Al aircraft, which is Israel's airline. But considering the fact that government workers literally swarmed the airport, even though we have not gotten an official statement from Turkey itself, I would assume that the government was informed of it. That's my assumption. Obviously, you can make up your own mind on that. But government officials are all over the place, customs officials and all kinds of officials. So the odds of the government not knowing about this are probably slim to none, in my opinion, but it is possible. But 41% said yes, Turkey should be punished, while 27% said no, it's really not that serious. And then 19% said only if it continues, then punish Turkey. And on this one, I would say, even though this is really not good form, because there was a guy having a medical incident on the plane, and Turkey was willing to let the guy die to make a political point, which we're still in a debate of whether or not the government was the one sponsoring that or not, but certainly not good form. I would say that Turkey generally is making a lot of anti-Western movements, which probably should be met with some sort of punishment to sort of put them back into line, because Turkey kind of does whatever they want to do, and that's really not the way an ally behaves if you're a true ally to the West. So just for all of Turkey's actions, I think they should be punished in some regard. I'm not sure how that would actually work, but they should be punished in some way. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe that some sort of a punishment should happen. Now, that is true that Turkish government officials did swarm the airport, but still we haven't heard an official announcement, I believe, from the Turks about this specific deal. Like there has to be an official government announcement from the central government where they say we support those actions at the airport or we condemn them. Because right now we don't know if those guys who showed up at the airport, the officials that swarmed the place, were just local police forces or local government officials from a specific territory or a province or a state inside of Turkey. We don't really know that for certain, and so it's really hard to say whether whether this treatment was the interest of the central government or just some local people taking out their anger on the Israelis that they have. We're not entirely sure on that, but one thing I will say is that the Turks are starting to do whatever the hell they want to do a little bit too much. Now, it's fine for them to do whatever the hell they want to do a little bit, because everyone does that, and that's just kind of expected. But when you start doing that a little bit too much, and a lot of it's at the detriment of allies or allies' interests, then it starts to become an issue. And this is starting to become a little bit of an issue to me, that they're starting to do openly hostile acts against nations that are either in the Western sphere or they are conducting whatever the hell they want, even if it's against our interests within a specific region. Going off of that, I would have to say that my personal opinion on the Turkish situation is that we should possibly start to distance ourselves diplomatically from the Turks and give them a little bit of a cold shoulder for a little bit and see how they deal with it. But I wouldn't do anything too severe or serious at this point. I would continue to wait and see what they may be doing in the future. If Turkey takes direct armed action or direct armed support in support of Lebanon or Hezbollah forces, now that is very clear, and we would have to take very severe action against Turkey in different forms. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And also, you're taking my life said, let's see, if there is no consequences to the actions, then why would they stop? If we give them a little bit of a notion, just a light notion that there will be consequences coming down the pipe in the future if they keep up these poor behaviors, they probably may turn them around. Because we don't want to go from 0 to a 100 immediately on the Turks. We have to kind of work our way up to getting to 100, because you know, it's kind of like putting someone in a wagon and then just starting to roll it down the hill. You know, you could of course push that wagon as hard as you can and get it up to its top speed at the top of the hill, and they're going to jump out. But the thing is that you're putting in so much muscle and force into getting that thing to top speed. Did you really need to do that, or did you just kind of have to push or kick that little wagon where it started to roll downhill, and then they'd hop out when it just picked up a little bit of speed? That's kind of the same thing that diplomacy works off of. You don't want to brute force a diplomatic situation. You kind of just want to put in just enough elbow grease or push it just a little bit to get what you want, and only that much. You don't want to overdo it, because then you could end up getting some pretty bad consequences or aftermath out of that. So going off of that, I would have to say we need to slowly start working on dealing with the Turks and what they're starting to do these days, but not make it too drastic and too quick, because then that could start to pose some big issues. Like, for example, Turkey could switch to the Russian side, and then if they do that, then we're in a pretty bad situation strategically with the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles and any future support going on with that. So we don't really want to alienate them, but at the same time, we can't have them keep on doing what they're doing and then act like everything's honky-dory. So we're kind of in a middle ground here. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And also, huge shout out once again to LSA Rocks, who is absolutely killing it right now on the fundraiser. And we've gotten up to $4.6 thousand. We are only $400 away from $5,000. That is wild. And so with that,
Crazy. And also, by the way, Enforcer, the LSA Rocks is throwing in about $550 because he threw in a couple that were anonymous actually, and he just said a minute ago, he said they came in anonymous. So I don't know what YouTube was doing with that. But LSA Rocks has thrown in a combined $550 since the last time we called him off. So absolutely huge support, by the way. And also, huge shout out to Gregory Lee, who put in a 50, and huge shout out to Gene Kustra as well, who put in a 100. So absolutely tremendous support from the fundraiser tonight, and I'm very glad to see it.
And I gotta say, it really is impressive. And another thing I'd like to say really quickly is I saw someone say, let's see here, I'm trying to see where it was. Let's see here. A second. Oh my lord, man, I lost it. It was in the live chat. It was a really interesting point. But dang, I cannot find it. So sadly, I won't be able to cover it. But still, huge shout out to everyone who is supporting on the fundraiser. And so with that, it is now time for us to move on into the area of Ukraine, where we got to see that a fairly significant explosion happened today within the southeastern area of the Kerch Strait. Well, really the area of Crimea. And from what we know, this could be the Energetic 2, which is a power plant in the area. We don't have a lot of information, but there's the fire. as LSA Rocks throws in another 100. Absolutely
Damn.
mental. Absolutely insane. I mean, that's blowing this fundraiser out of the water. We are now up to $4.75 thousand. We are getting $250 away from reaching $5,000, which is $2,000 over the fundraiser goal. Unbelievable. LSA Rocks is killing it in the chat right now. Meanwhile, moving on out of that area, it's time for us to get to our location unknown. So we got to see that the Ukrainian forces today were cleaning the main gun of an M55, which is a heavily modified T55 that actually comes from Slovenia. And when you see this guy here is having a very fun time cleaning the barrel of this tank. Having fun. And it's good to have fun every once in a while here and there. We also got to see this new thermal blanket that's being developed for Ukrainian forces in use right here on an infrared camera or a thermal camera. When you see them getting the blanket.
Oh, they've actually had this for a minute. I saw this, I think, 6 months ago, actually. It was pretty cool.
But now Ukraine ADOPS, which we know provides a lot of support to Ukrainian forces, is starting to show it as well. And it looks as though they're going to start providing it in larger numbers. So it looks like they're starting to show an example of how it works. So that way they can tell people that this is some of the additional support that they provide to Ukraine. One day, hopefully, we will be able to work with Ukraine ADOPS. They seem pretty cool. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we also get to see some Ukrainian soldiers rescuing cats from a trench wall. I don't know how they got stuck in there, but they did. And we're going to be viewing the ultra, hip-hop beats. And also, LSA Rocks threw in another $100
Hey, another one.
donation. Mr. President, there has been a second LSA Rocks donation. It's like, damn. It's like, that's crazy. And we can see them rescuing the cat and the kittens.
Also, shout out to Neil Vizanon, by the way. He put in a 50.
Man, the LSA does rock. I gotta say, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. The Elite Spring Army is on a roll tonight, absolutely going insane. And we are just $25 away from $5,000 raised. Unbelievable. Everyone loves kittens, and everyone loves cats. And so
What happened to that dog? You know that dog that sniffed out those explosives or whatever? What was his name? That little beagle?
Patron?
Yeah, what happened to him?
That dog retired, my boy.
Oh, he retired. Man, he only served for like a minute.
Yeah, well, you know, the fame gets to you a little bit. Sometimes you just got to retire.
Oh, damn, man. I missed that dog. I was like, where is he? I hadn't seen that dog in a long time. So they should bring him back out a little bit. I miss that dog.
Let me see if I can find him. Patron, the bomb dog. Here we go. So let me go and see if I can find some information here. So the dog is only 4 years old. That means it was about 2 years old at the beginning of the war. So it was a fairly young dog. But let's see here. There's Patron right there.
Look at that. He's literally got one in front of him.
Yeah, just a nice big bomb. It's bigger than the dog. Let's see here. Let's see. In addition, growth. Let's see. They know that the use of viral videos helped to contribute desired narrative regarding the war. While in Patron's case, it had the benefit of raising the awareness of the problem of mine clearing in deoccupied territories. Let's see here. I'm trying to find. Okay, so they opened up.
Also, of course, you see that we're over 5,000 raised now. You see that?
Damn! We're at 5,041. Damn! That's actually crazy. That is insane. I cannot believe that. I really can't. Like, Matthew, I'm calling cap. I'm kidding. I saw it. But still, unbelievable and super cool to see. But also, Matthew, you can see here on the Wikipedia page, all information about Patron really stops at the beginning of 2023. And so he kind of went into retirement at that point and isn't really around that much in the public sphere. But there's the puppy.
You know, he's got a cartoon and everything, too.
Oh, yeah, they mentioned that on the Wikipedia down here.
Oh, look at that. He's got a YouTube channel. Man, this is a popular dog, I'm telling you what. He's even got a partnership and a sponsorship with UNICEF.
Man, I'm telling you what, and look at that, dude. And we've fundraised for UNICEF before. That's so crazy. That's whack. That's cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, about the whole Patron thing. And we also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours. And good googly moogly.
Oh, no. 12 Bobcats on a Sunday? That's crazy. Man, that is crazy. Also, damn, like the losses are high. Like it's the weekend. It's supposed to be a break time, but they're not taking a break, man. They're finishing them off.
Man, instead of the Russians taking a break, the Ukrainians are breaking them. But beyond that, 1,140 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 19 APCs, 75 supply trucks, an insanely high amount, 7 main battle tanks, 53 artillery pieces, 46 drones, 1 MLRS, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 12 Bobcat skid steers were destroyed over the past 24 hours alone. The losses were insanely high, and so was the amount of frontline action as well. Let me see if I can get you all a deep state update here on this area around Vovchansk, because if I remember correctly, there is no frontline advances that have been seen here today, but the Russians are still taking incredibly high casualties in this direction. Meanwhile, up in the northern area, we've also seen that really no frontline advances have been made by either side, but we were able to get a little bit of news out of the area behind the lines that Typhoon MRAPs of the Russian Federation are beginning to be transported into Ukraine, and we can see them popping up here. These things are fairly new and are really a ripoff of the American MRAP design, but also what's pretty crazy about them is that they have turrets on top with 2 A-42 30mm autocannons mounted in them. So they have the firepower of a BMP-2, but the maneuverability of a standard armored car, which is pretty bizarre and pretty interesting to see. These were actually spotted around the Shevakino area from what we could tell. Moving on from that and into the area of the Kremenna Forest, we were able to hear once again that Ukrainian forces have been making success today against the Russian Federation, and were supposedly able to push them back a little bit further. We have not seen this corroborated on Deep State UA today, and I was just making sure that we were correct there, and we are correct, but we were able to hear that apparently more success was made today. And we were able to see that the Ukrainians were continuing to destroy Russian equipment in this area, like this T-72. Oh my, yeah. But anyway, so you can see the tank get hit.
That tank was dusty. When they smacked it, and all that dust came flying off of it.
Man, I'm telling you what, man. That thing be dusty. And someone said,
Straight out the museum.
Someone said, is this credible? I don't know, man. We're just covering the news here. It's like, I know what that question is. Someone's about to say, I don't think this is credible. And then they're going to get banned. But we can see the tank burning. And Matthew already got rid of him. Because that right there is very sus to say something like that. That is straight bot questioning right there. Is this credible? It's like, why don't you just watch and find out?
Brother, ooh. Brother, ooh.
Brother, ooh. Huge shout out to Pigeon Forge, by the way. Big shout out to him. Moving on from that clip and on to our next one, we also got to see a Ukrainian soldier firing an AT-4 at the Ruskies today. Check it out.
That guy came running out to see this one. He couldn't miss it.
Dude, he was like, Mom, get the camera. So they whipped out the camera. But still, pretty nice to see. Moving on out of the Kremenna area and down into Bakhmut, we got to see today that in the area of Pereskovivka, Russian forces got plastered today by a 250-kilogram bomb called the Hammer. And it really does look like a hammer when it slams down right there. Damn! As LSA Rocks throws in another $200 into the fundraiser.
Another one.
Brother, but still.
Brother,
And speaking of which, we were at $5.25 thousand on the fundraiser. Unbelievable.
Damn.
My reaction is just like that one right there on screen to that number on the fundraiser. But moving on from that clip and on into our next one near to the area of Shisivyar, we got to see that a tank was stuck in a ditch. That's a tank in a ditch. Really a crater, but, you know, a ditch if you want to call it that. And with that, that is the end of that clip right there, but really interesting to see and nice to know. Keep it up. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see that a recon drone got shot down today by the Black Swan using another drone to shoot it down. And there goes the drone. It looks like the Black Swan drone's trying to recover at the moment. But we see it hitting the Russian drone again. Just look at that accuracy. Whop. Got him. Dead on the nail.
Slow.
And with that, that's the end of that clip. Wonderful to see. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see that the 1st Brigade was destroying Russian positions in this area today as well. But that video is no longer available. Womp womp. Meanwhile, on the Frontline map, we were able to see that apparently Ukrainian forces have not been able to push the Russians back too much today, but they have been able to make efforts in holding the Russians back and preparing themselves to try and push back and reclaim some of the territory in the area around Chasiv Yar. But moving on from this little bit of news and on into our next bit, a little bit further down the line, we also get to see that the 4th Rubish ended up capturing some Russian soldiers today. We can see the video here starting with the 4th Rubish soldiers inside of this trench. And we see the Ukrainians laying down some heat. Also, while we were watching this clip, I see a lot of people saying, wait a minute, why in the world did you get mad at the guy who's asking, is this credible? Well, the reason why is because we have seen that question asked a million times in the live chat. And back in the day, we used to go, yes, we use video and picture evidence to confirm these sources. And then literally after we'd say that, they'd go, fake, fake, George Soros funded, CIA funded, kill him. And like, they would go crazy, and then we ban them. So we know when people come in and ask that question, it's not a sincere question. It is a bot trying to start stirring up questions about this channel's validity with news reporting. So just wanted to put that out there.
It's different. It's if somebody really wanted to know if it was credible, they'd simply say, "Oh, and what's the source for this?" Like, that's a legit question. Like, that's a fair question. But to come in and say, "Is this credible?" That's like questioning someone's honesty. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, it's planting a seed. What the hope is that it's a psychological thing. They're wanting to plant the seed in audiences' minds that the information that we're putting out is not credible by asking the question, "Is this even credible at all?" But skipping forward, we can see them taking the Russians prisoner right here.
Мужики, без хуйни, отвечаю. Без хуйни, все будет окей. Бегом, бегом, марш!
And we see them taking the prisoners off the front line and moving them further back.
Братан, окажу помощь, базарю. Только надо дойти, потому что сейчас ваши же нас разъебашат.
We now see them assessing the Russian soldiers. It appears that they're also going to help them out medically by applying bandages to wounds. And Austin Bowman says, so basically, is this credible? Is provocative? Damn, didn't know the bots did that. Yeah, they do. They do that a lot. And that's something that a lot of people wouldn't know unless if you're in our position and we have to constantly pay attention to people in the live chat and what they say and then ban them. Because while y'all usually do not see the people we ban because they disappear from the chat immediately and we're the only ones who can see them, there's a very recognizable pattern to how bots behave in a live chat that makes it very clear to spot them. And that is one of the literal oldest tricks in the book for a bot, is to ask, is this credible? Which immediately puts the credibility of this channel's news reporting in question. And then after we answer that question, which then gives even more validity to them asking the question of whether we are credible and distrusting our honesty, they then go on the offensive in the chat trying to say that we're liars about something.
Also, another common pattern question is, who's winning the war? Like, if you see someone ask that, 95% of the time, that's a Russian troll trying to start a conversation to dissuade people from supporting Ukraine.
Because at this point, 858 days in, I think everyone's fairly clear about who's winning the war and who's losing the war. So if you have to ask that question, you're in a little bit of a weird spot. But meanwhile, we can see that these soldiers from the 4th Rubish are actually treating the Russians medically in trying to assess any wounds that they have before they move them back for processing and move them into a prisoner of war camp. And we can see them moving on, and that's the end of the clip. But really interesting to see the 4th Rubish going to work like that in that area. From what we understand, the 4th Rubish is still around the Kurtamivka region of the front line, and they are continuing to hold that area and conduct actions against the Russians. But moving on from that into the area of Troitsky, we also got to see that a Russian team was wiped out today by the 56th Motorized Rifle Brigade. And so here's the clip. We can see the Russians right here moving through the rubble.
Jeez, Fred, you call him Barney Rubble?
And we can see them, once again, showing the Russians getting blown up right there. I think their position is gone.
Move on, move on, move on, move on.
What?
Move on, move on.
The video is paused. What do you mean by that?
Like it's about to get nasty.
Oh. All right. You were just saying move on. I was like, okay. I was
man,
I can't really move.
But
But moving on from that and into the Avdiivka area, we got to see that the Russian car was burning after getting hit. Looks like a squad wipe.
Сгорела моя Нива. Поздравьте меня, блядь. А сгорела как? FPV, от которого мы бежали, он прилетел к машине. Сука.
Они нас, походу, с дороги еще пошли.
Да, да. Пойду и засниму его. То скажут, спиздел.
We now see them getting up to the car, which is
Вот моя
toasting in
Нива
the
стоит
trees.
красивая, блядь. Хорошо горит, блядь. Сука, новая резина.
Dude, that is like a fire from a movie.
650
Like, it's so orange. It's not like that black
Теперь я
smoke and
успешно
that
без
kind of
машины.
like really like crappy looking fire that you normally see. That's some clean fuel right there. Maybe even some vodka. But moving on from that little clip right there and into the area of Pervomaiske, we also got to see that the Ukrainians blew up some building today inside of Pervomaiske. Here's the clip, Matthew. Observe this video, okay? Check this out.
whoa!
Whoa, Jack! Whoa! And we hear the Temu company is finally here to arrive the package. But at the same time, a lot of people are wondering, what in the hell happened? Why did that large explosion hit right there in the middle of Pervomaiske out of the blue? Well, it's actually because a couple of Russian soldiers ended up taking a picture in front of the building and posting it on social media, which tipped off the Ukrainians that the building was being used by the Russians, and then they ended up blowing it up. This was the exact picture right here that led to the building, this building right behind them, getting blown up by a bomb. And I gotta tell you something, Matthew. These guys' camouflages, it is like an airsofter's or a LARPer's convention right here. You've got the actual frogman camo pattern from like the 1980s in the Soviet Union. You then got Ratnik pattern in the middle somehow, which is a West German or a modern German camouflage. And then you got this guy wearing a Gorka. And all of them are wearing the goofiest hats that you could find.
Man, what is this, like straight off of Alibaba?
Dude, this is the Temu army right here, man. They come straight from, like, the factory, man. I don't know what this is, but these are the cheapest uniforms I've ever seen. I don't know where in the world this guy is getting Ratnik from or even wearing it, but this is the picture that tipped off the Ukrainians to blow up the building in Pervomaiske. That is the one right there. So moving on from that and a little bit a ways away, we also got to see the Ukrainian forces were destroying Russians around the area of Kharkiv. Here's the clip. And we see them just hitting the Russians over and over and over. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but really nice to see them continuously hitting those Russian forces. And moving on from that and further down the line into the area around Novomykhailivka, we also got to see the Russian breakthrough attempt in this area was destroyed quite thoroughly. Here's the clip. When you see the Russians moving along, of course, getting hit nearly by artillery fire. And now they're finally making their way to destruction as they got blown up right there in the middle of the field. And we can see the Russians bailing out. Blit, suka blit, and we can see another vehicle entering the field, once again under fire, just like the last one. We can see an FPV drone hitting them.
That was like a whole can of something. They just gave him a whole can of whoop ass.
Man, I'm telling you what, man. And that one's chuffing and puffing down there, man. Oh, dang. Oh, dang. Oh! Dude, the Ukrainians are blowing them away. They're not taking any chances this time. They're just dropping everything on them. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. But still, really nice to see. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this little video right here and on into our next one in the area of Novomykhailivka. But a lot of people have been saying, before we get to the paratroopers repelling this assault, that Zelensky is in negotiations to use American ATACMS to hit Russian air bases that are farther inside of the Russian Federation. A lot of people have been having thoughts. Some people are saying that the United States will give full permission. Others are saying that they'll give some permissions. Others are saying that they'll manage the escalation. They'll say no. And others are a little bit unsure. But a lot of people have had many different opinions about this. And Matthew, tell us, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about as well? Do you think that the U.S. will give full permission? Or do you think that they won't?
So it looks like 52% said the U.S. will give full permission to use the American ATACMS to hit these far Russian air bases very soon, while 29% said they will give some permission, and 12% said the U.S. will manage escalation and say no. So on this one, I'm actually in the minority. I have a strong suspicion that the U.S. is going to do escalation management, aka appeasement, and say, no, don't hit the faraway air bases. We'll think about it some more and we'll get back with you, let's say, around September when we send those F-16s, maybe. So I'm actually with the 12%. I don't think the U.S. is going to have a backbone on this one and simply say, yeah, go right ahead and do it. Save your country, destroy the airplanes while they're on the ground, instead of telling them to wait until they're in the air and then try to take them down. So I don't think permission's coming. I hope I'm proven wrong, but I really doubt it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I believe that permission probably will be coming in a very limited form, but a very, very limited form, probably with prior U.S. approval being required or something along those lines, because I just do not see the United States giving complete permissions to the Ukrainian armed forces to use ATACMS however they wish. I just don't really see that coming around the pipe. I don't think that it's going to be a flat-out no. I think they'll just allow it in very, very rare instances, and it pretty much will have to be pre-approved at every single level before the attack is conducted, which will be massively slowing down the progress of those attacks and also the efficiency of them as well. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And moving on from that, we also got to see the paratroopers repelling the Soul again in the area, and I believe that this is a duplicate of the last clip. What do you know? And so moving on from that and a little bit behind the lines, we did get to see some Russian supply trucks getting hit by FPV drones. And check this out. All right, we're going to be muting that funk. But we can see the FPV drone lining itself up for the supply truck and coming in for the kill. And Silly Wabbit said, "Why are you screaming?" "Because I can." But we can see the supply truck on fire now. I'll be honest, my voice is not feeling that hot tonight, so it's actually a little tough to scream, but I still do it so that way we can convey the emotion and energy that we're trying to on this stream.
I can do it with one word. Damn.
Damn. Oh, man.
Also, let's see here. I saw a question from Adam McLean. He said here, I saw a video of a thumbnail today claiming the U.S. has a secret base in Ukraine. Is it true? Adam, I think I might have seen the same video that you were looking at as well. And I had known before watching that video that we do have a sort of like an unspoken, sort of like not really a base, but more of like an operations center inside of Ukraine, which is joint between the intelligence agencies in the United States and also the Ukrainian government. And it's used mainly for helping to target the Russian forces and also gather signals intelligence on the Russians. But we're not told of the exact location of it. I believe it's in Kyiv. But that's just a belief. But that's what I know about it. But Enforcer, have you heard?
Yes, it's kind of the way we relay some of the information that we find out about Russia to Ukraine. The other way is directly through military liaisons that talk to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense from the U.S. Department of Defense, but it's a part of our ability to be able to communicate with the Ukrainians. So it's not like a CIA biolab or anything crazy like that. It's really just a communications link in between the CIA and their information, and then relaying that on to the Ukrainian sources that would need the information. And so with that, I hope that does address that well and also show that clip fairly well. And moving on from that, we got to see the Russians running from some drones in the Zaporizhia front in the back of a pickup. You just hear them rattling along.
Kamikaze! Kamikaze!
And now the drone is here. Oh. Dude, I don't know if he got hit in a good way or a bad way, because it blew up and he went, ah. It's like, hey dude, it's like, are you good? Listen to this. It's like, I don't know. Like, it's like, is that a shriek of pain or something? I don't know.
Блядь. Пизда нахуй!
Блядь.
Сука!
I want to ask this guy, is it better now? These guys are getting destroyed.
Yeah, I think they're destroying the truck themselves. And that's
Man, Diddy's around.
He likes to party, and you gotta tell him no. But moving on from that, we also got to see that the Russians made a brand new stupid vehicle today.
Запорожья. Испытание.
Would you look at that?
Изобретение Павла Сергеевича Петухова, инженера Сланского района, десантникам-штурмовикам передали. Пробы в поле.
It's a machine.
It's a mechanical horse, блядь. Тишинг русично. It's one horse open sleigh. That is so stupid, man.
That is ridiculous.
Oh my god, that's what it is?
What the hell is that crap on the side of it, though?
Dude, this is the thingamabob, bro. They're pulling around the wagon with the thingamabob. No way, they actually made a documentary about this thing, Matthew. I'm not kidding. It's an actual documentary about how this piece of shit works. Look at that.
Применение в полевых условиях, прежде всего для перевозки раненых бойцов и транспортировки различных грузов. Мощность двигателя 20 лошадиных сил. Он развивает скорость до 30 км в час, грузоподъемность до 500 кг. Буксировщику прилагаются телега и сани-волокуши, которые приспособлены специально для...
like some type of like Ripsaw mini tank or something, but it's just a janky version of it.
Oh my lord, man.
Для того, чтобы перевозить раненого. Располагать лежачего можно, сняв сиденье или открыв его в правую или левую стороны. Можно загрузить раненого лебедкой, откинув задний борт, что служит сходней. Все продумано и сделано, чтобы было удобно использовать это оборудование. Буксировщик отличается габаритами. Высота буксировщика небольшая, чтобы при обстреле управляющий им сидел или лежал в санях, которые...
My man here, instead of going, drive, damn it, he goes, yeah!
Высота буксировщика небольшая, чтобы при обстреле управляющий...
What does it look like?
It literally looks like they ripped off a tiller motor, you know, like a tiller for like the ground, and they put it on this thing, they added on to it, and then they added a track underneath it. It's literally that.
I think it is, man, because this thing is terrible, man. Like, this man is literally driving this thing like it's a small horse-drawn carriage. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
им сидел или лежал в санях, который тянет аппарат, и при этом находился как можно ниже. Также можно управлять и стоя. Изделие отличается надежностью, простотой и возможностью ремонта в полевых условиях. Подвеска спроектирована для эксплуатации в условиях бездорожья. Давление резиновой гусеницы на землю очень низкое, с тем, чтобы технику не смогли подорвать противотанковая и противопехотная мины.
That is so stupid. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
That is stupid, man. Like, really stupid. Like, I want to know, what is the conveyor belt tread thing on the bottom? What is that made out of? Like, where'd they get that?
I think it's made out of conveyor belt tread. Like, I think you answered the question by asking the question. I think it's a conveyor belt tread, man, that they just put on that thing.
I don't even know where they'd get that from. They had a little spotlight from Temu on the front of it as well. They had to be able to see the way in front of it. Like, you're gonna be riding this thing at night, like it's like you're gonna go to the bar or something with it. It's like, man, I'd love to see somebody pull up on this thing. This is great, like the mobile chariot lawnmower thingy-madoo.
Dude, wait, hang on, dude. Let me go back to that clip of him riding. Me and the fellas going out for a pack of beers at the gas station at 12 in the morning.
До 500 килограммов.
And those Amish people have upgraded.
Bro, they gonna be making it to Warsaw on this thing here, man, on a tank. One tank to Warsaw. But, oh my lord, dude. This is truly the dumbest thing. The dumbest thing ever. Like, I don't really know what the purpose is, because it can't really carry a lot of people. It might be able to carry 2 other guys rather than him. So it's like, what do you use this thing for?
Man, you just use it for, you know, freaking clowning on people at this point.
Man, dude, I actually kind of want one of these things, so that way we could use it in an actual real-life YouTube video where we just go around.
Yeah.
And like,
go ahead.
Dude, I would be riding that thing, piloting that stupid tread machine thing with one hand, and then in the other hand have the crank and just be shooting at targets as I'm driving by on this thing. Dude,
I'd be bouncing this thing over some speed bumps like you've never seen. I'd have that thing rattling to bits.
Oh my lord, dude. This thing would actually be pretty funny to have in real life, but this thing is dumb. It's very, very stupid. But moving on from little Tachanka boy here, riding around in this Tachanka wagon, it's time for us to move on down into the area of Kherson, where we got to see that boat attack that happened a while ago, where those 2 guys went and yeeted themselves off into the river. We actually got to see every single perspective of this attack that happened on that boat today, from the Ukrainian drone's perspective, from everyone's perspective. So here's the clip. This is the view from the Ukrainian drone. The Russians are trying to fire at the drone. I mean, you see they're actually doing a little bit of evasive maneuvers, but not really that much. Also, did anyone notice that this guy isn't even firing at the drone? He's firing directly off the left side of the boat. He didn't even know where the drone was the entire time he was shooting. He just shot into
That's the definition of trying to look busy so that way you don't get in trouble.
Yeah, he's like, "Blad, drone!" He just started shooting at like the other side of the bank of the river. So the drone hits right by, from what I can tell, the driver, blows up on the boat. And now we can see the footage we saw a while ago.
Seen those.
Yeah, yoink! There they go, and there he goes. But that was the view from the Ukrainian drones that we're getting to see now. And that's the end of that clip. But that was the entire story from beginning to end. That's the end of that clip. But that's all the news we have from Kherson. Now, without further ado, it's time for us to move up into the area of Kyiv and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 858 of The Wire. And today we got the white screen and a 4-minute speech, a pure blessing. And so, without further ado...
speech, please. Give me some more speech. Tell me what happened today.
Here is the speech, Blade.
Дорогі українці, українки, сьогодні в Харкові ще одне влучання російської керованої авіабомби. Був уражений поштовий термінал, звичайний цивільний об'єкт. Станом на зараз відомо про 10 поранених. Усім надається необхідна допомога. Одна людина, на жаль, загинула. Мої співчуття всім рідним. І ці їхні бомби одна з ключових основ путінської здатності воювати. Чим швидше світ допоможе нам розібратись із російською бойовою авіацією, що запускає ці бомби, чим швидше ми зможемо завдати ударів, цілком справедливих, до речі, по російській військовій інфраструктурі, по військових аеродромах, тим ближче буде мир, справжній мир. Світ має достатню силу, щоб примусити Росію до миру. Зокрема, у захисті Харківської області від російського наступу ми довели, що рішучість партнерів дійсно допомагає. Удари по російському прикордонню допомогли захистити життя. Так само допоможуть і подальші рішення, сміливі рішення, які повинні бути, яких ми потребуємо, про які говоримо постійно з нашими партнерами. Найближчими тижнями ми продовжимо комунікацію, щоб отримати необхідні рішення. Сьогодні, за підсумками цього дня, цих тижнів, я хочу подякувати всім нашим людям, які незмінно після будь-якого російського удару прибувають на місце, ведуть рятувальні роботи, розбирають завали, надають допомогу пораненим. Дякую всьому колективу ДСНС України, усім працівникам комунальних служб, які допомагають поліцейським, медичним працівникам, тим, хто завжди на місці і завжди з людьми. Дякую кожному, хто залучається до порятунку. Особливо відзначу хлопців з Дніпровщини: Ігор Сорокін, Андрій Коряка, Іван Подоляк із воєнізованого гірничо-рятувального загону. Також рятувальники Роман Курмаєв, Михайло Ішечкін, Ігор Гетало, Віталій Тимофєєв, Іван Свинобой, Олег Токарєв, Євгеній Шаповал. Дякую вам всім і вашим колегам в області, і також Донеччина, яку Росія хоче перетворити всю на руїни. Відзначу сьогодні рятувальників, які працюють на Донеччині, і буквально щодня рятують життя. Ігор Коржов, Андрій Ленфіра, Олександр Качан, Антон Павлюченко, Дмитро Руденко, Андрій Долженко, Павло Захаров. Дякую вам, хлопці, всім, хто з вами працює, всім, хто вам допомагає. Ще одне дуже важливе. Цими тижнями після першого саміту миру ми жодного дня не припиняли комунікацію з партнерами про підтримку нашого ком'юніке саміту. Вже є плюс 10 підписів після саміту під ком'юніке від різних суб'єктів з різних частин світу. Світ має бути якнайширше представлений в роботі заради миру. Дякую нашій команді за активність. І також вже є більше деталей щодо роботи в групах за пунктами формули над конкретними безпековими питаннями. Мир не має альтернативи. І як би Росія не намагалась розширити війну, ми зробимо все, щоб мир Україні повернути. Справедливий мир. Дякую всім, хто допомагає. Дякую кожній, хто захищає нашу державу і людей. Слава усім, хто б'ється заради України. Слава Україні!
And Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 858 of the war. And that wraps up the entire news segment for tonight. And what a news segment it was. Not only was the channel covering breaking news, but this channel was making breaking news as it raised another $5.5 thousand for Nova Ukraine, an amazing nonprofit that has been operating in Ukraine for quite some time. I've got to say that it's absolutely unbelievable to know that all of y'all have been able to pull together once again as a united Leaf Spring Army and support this fundraiser once again, sending it over the top and making sure that the Leaf Spring Army has never missed a single fundraiser goal. I am absolutely blown away, absolutely amazed that we've been able to support Nova Ukraine so much tonight. And Matthew, I was wondering, do we have any more top donors of tonight's stream?
Yes, we do. And we have a massive 200 from D. Maynard once again, as well as a 50 from Mike Smith. And those are the top ones since the last time. And also, once again, huge shout out to LSA Rocks for putting in almost, I think it was like $1,000 combined. So that makes him the largest donor of the night. And huge shout out to all three of y'all for that massive support of a very tremendous fundraiser. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, it is absolutely incredible. And I gotta say a huge thanks to each and every single one of y'all, once again, both to the top donors and the people that we weren't able to call out for supporting this fundraiser and helping to make it possible. The support that we give helps to save lives, and it is something that I have to say we always have to point out. We always have to say that it's wonderful to know that all of y'all are continuously with this channel and continuing to help us to fundraise and support nonprofits in Ukraine, because y'all are the ones who make it possible. So once again, a huge thanks to all the people we were able to call out tonight and the folks that we were not able to call out in the even larger and more numerous numbers, because all of y'all helped this fundraiser to achieve the amazing goals that it did tonight. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are about to be moving on into the question segment itself. And so with that, take it away, Matthew.
All right, so for the final question segment of the night, we're jumping right into our live chat questions. And the first one is going to go to Pixel Lord, who says, has there been any confirmation on the Russians mining that submarine base related to the EU?
The Russians mining that submarine base. Do you know what submarine base he's possibly talking about, Matthew?
Yes, I do. Let me go to the Twitter post real quick. We had gotten some news. It was unconfirmed, by the way. I had reported this in the short war video earlier today, that there were some allegations by NATO officials that Russia may have mined some EU submarine sites. And I'm trying to scroll here to get the details on it in the Twitter account, which it seems to be pretty down low, because I'm not seeing it right off the bat. So here it is. It says, according to Nexta, by the way, it says the Times reports that NATO officials suspect Russia may have mined critical EU submarine infrastructure in the North Sea. And that's simply all we know about it at the moment. So we did not report it as concrete fact because it's simply not that. It simply may have mined. So we're not really sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I would doubt that a little bit, because for a Russian vessel to be able to get close enough to start dropping mines off, that would be a little bit odd. So generally, I'd have to say I'm not really sure if I believe that information or not, but hopefully we'll be able to find out a little bit more information in the future. But for the moment, I would have to declare ignorance on that question because I don't know enough about that possible story, and also I'm having a little bit of a problem believing that the Russians would mine ports that were not in an active war. And so with that, I hope that does address that somewhat fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a question from Judy, who says, has the men from North Korea arrived in Ukraine just yet?
No, they have not. We believe that they're going to be arriving in around 3 weeks' time at this point, but it's going to be about a brigade. So it's going to be 3,000 to 5,000 guys, and considering that they're going to be arriving in 3 weeks, we'll probably have pretty clear information that they're going to move into Ukraine in about a week and a half's time, because they'll have to start moving by train through the Russian Federation and towards Ukraine, which will take a substantial amount of time, especially for an entire brigade to be able to move that great distance. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Terry Davis. And they said, since the State Department has issued warnings for anyone attending the Olympics, do you think that the warnings are just CYA, or actual increased chatter, or actionable intel?
I would say it's most likely just possible increased security at the Olympics. I don't know, man. Reread that one again.
It says, since the State Department has issued warnings for anyone attending the Olympics, do you think that the warnings are just CYA, or actual increased chatter, or actionable intel?
I would say that they are probably actionable intel, because they're starting to work off of that across the board. They're also doing that for U.S. bases in general across the entirety of Europe, which is leading us generally to believe that there is some sort of a possible imminent threat that is coming around in Europe at this time, not just about the Olympics, but really just for U.S. service members in general in the entirety of the continent. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also real quick, by the way, I was just told by Andy L that he sent in a $250 donation to the fundraiser. It was anonymous tonight, and I saw several of those, so I wasn't really sure who had done it, but one of them was from Andy L, a longtime channel legend, and huge shout out to you, Andy, for putting in that generous support. And we also have another question here. This one is going to go to Wasted Piggy, who says, do you think we will see North Korean defections when the troops arrive? And I heard it's the engineering corps, so I don't know if they'll be near anything where they can defect, but it would be cool though.
It would be pretty cool. I'm not really sure if they would defect. There's probably going to be a lot of political officers that follow this unit into Ukraine, to be entirely honest. So we are not entirely certain if there will be a mass amount of defections. There may be a mass amount of executions for desertions, possibly, but not a lot of actual desertions that make their way over to the Ukrainian side and turn into a defection. So I would generally have to say I'm expecting that the amount of defections will be low. Probably just for the fact that there will be so many political officers around, it'll be really hard for them to defect. We usually see that on North Korean missions for really any group that goes outside of North Korea. Like, for example, during the Olympics when North Korea competes, we always see an exceptionally high amount of political officers and handlers that are around the Olympic athletes or the Olympians, making sure that they do not possibly defect to the West while they're outside the country. So I would believe that the military would operate under a very similar premise. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question is going to go to Dillian Blaze, who says, do you think that the imminent attack on U.S. bases in Europe would be an airstrike or perhaps an ICBM? And if so, does Iran have these capabilities to hit inside of Europe? Because I wouldn't think so.
I would largely doubt that it would be an airstrike or an ICBM, because the fact that the U.S. Department of Defense and U.S. Bases inside of Europe are telling service members not to wear their uniforms off base and to identify their spouses to identify as the relatives of service members, that is leading me to believe that this is most likely having nothing to do with an airstrike or an ICBM, because the ICBM doesn't really care if you're wearing U.S. military insignia off the base. It's going to cook you either way. So I would generally have to say that this is most likely going to be an insurgent attack, to be entirely honest. And so going off of that, Iran would certainly have the abilities for an insurgent attack, but an airstrike or an ICBM launch into Europe, not so much. And also, we wouldn't really have to worry about U.S. service members being in or out of uniform in the middle of an ICBM attack, because probably everyone, well, about a third of everyone in the Northern Hemisphere would be dead probably within 7 minutes. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you so much for asking a pretty interesting question, though, Dillian. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I see people in the live chat. I see chatter. Kind of like people were wondering, do we hear chatter about the Olympics? We're hearing a different type of chatter. Something coming along the Signals Intel line here. Mention of code word marmot. And I want to know, did we have him available?
Let me check if we do. I'm trying to see if we do.
Is he home?
Let's see here. Oh, hello there.
It's Alan. Welcome back, Alan. Good to see you, Alan.
Alan. Oh, hello there. Would you like a plum, Governor? Or would you better yet like a rook? What would you like?
Or would you like something out of fat, juicy cake?
Oh, yeah, baby. It's organic. But still, it is Alan the Marmot, baby. And I gotta say, it is a beautiful marmot, a gorgeous marmot. We love the marmot. We love Alan the Marmot. And who in the world could dislike Alan the Marmot? And so with that, I gotta say, thank you everyone for wanting to see Alan the Marmot for just a short while, because Alan the Marmot is an absolute channel legend. Been here really since the beginning of this year, and I don't think Alan the Marmot is ever going away. It's like the only joke that is stuck for this long ever in the channel, and I cannot wait to see where Alan the Marmot goes. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because we love the marmot. Why wouldn't we love the marmot? And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next question.
All right, and our next question here is gonna go to. Also, before we move on to that, by the way, I saw something in the live chat that I wanted to address. It kind of relates back to that question that I saw Adam ask earlier. He'd asked something about a potential CIA base inside of Ukraine. We had mentioned that there is some sort of like post in Kyiv that is tasked with joint intelligence collection and signals intelligence. I saw someone else just say a moment ago, well, why wouldn't we use that post to study with literally eyes on the ground the strategy of the Russians? And just using speculation here and also common sense, we're presented right now with an excellent opportunity to literally examine and break down every single bad strategy that the Russians use in war. And I'm sure that we do have people on the ground that are, deciphering that and seeing it firsthand. So that way we can come up with like a manual or some sort of guide to know exactly what the Russians would do if there is an actual ground war and make it really up to date. So I'm sure that there probably are people like that probably leave the post to go out and, take notes. Because that makes logical sense. We should send someone out because this is a great opportunity to study their tactics for whatever they're worth. The tactics really aren't worth anything, but at least we know what they would do if there is a situation that arises between a conflict between Russia and the West in the future. But what are you thinking, Force? You think there's people out running around taking down notes?
Oh yeah, there's people always taking down notes everywhere. There's people observing everything everywhere. The CIA has people in Russia. The FSB has people in Europe. Everyone's always taking down an exceptionally high amount of notes. And a lot of people would always think that there is a load of stuff that can be kept super, super secret. And the reality is that nothing is really kept super, super secret. And that's one thing that I always find. I'll be honest here and just give you a little bit of personal opinion of my own. I cannot stand conspiracy theories that always make it sound like the entire world is this well put together thing, because it is very incompetent on most levels. It is very poorly put together with very little effort, and it is really easy to find the truth when you just look with a little bit of extra ability, and you also have a little bit of knowledge of what you're looking for. You can find out really a lot quite easily. And that's one thing that conspiracy theorists never get right. Like, for example, the one conspiracy theory that I see nowadays as one of the most prevalent ones is that there is the secret world government. And it's like, do you really think that everyone, the millions of people who would be involved in that would be able to keep that secret? Like, it's like, come on, be real. It's like that would be stupid and ridiculous to expect, because, you sit there and you have a whole bunch of people playing War Thunder, and then someone gets pissed off that a tank is misrepresented in game, so they release the entire classified document for the Challenger 2. It's like, if there was a secret government, it would have already been out there and quite easy to see. That's one thing I can't stand about conspiracy theories. And so my whole point in saying that is that things are really easy to see. And Russian FSB guys could just be sitting around in Germany right now taking notes outside of an airfield about what vehicles are entering, what vehicles are leaving, what airplanes are flying in, what airplanes are leaving. And just off of that information alone, they can start to get a pretty good idea off of what's going on at that specific airfield and what it may be doing as a part of a bigger picture within the Western world. There's a lot to get out of that, and the United States can do the exact same thing inside of Russia. Information is very easy to gather on that level, and of course cyber warfare makes it a lot more difficult to be able to infiltrate a mainframe and be able to gather information out of it, but nevertheless, it is something that we also engage in as well, to once again gather more information. There are loads of people with notepads running around, because it's a huge part of being able to know what our enemies are doing is gathering intelligence on them. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, John J. said, LOL, the United States literally has a black budget. Yeah, but then a lot of people sit there and go, oh, it's for the freaking aliens. No, it's like, it's just stuff they don't want on the record, like paying CIA guys in foreign countries money, or paying possible insurgent groups money to go conduct certain kinds of operations. You generally don't want that publicly known and publicly stated, like support to Ukraine, where you're like, hey, I'm going to send 8 Patriots. Like, hey, I'm going to give this money that we made off of selling missiles to Iran to these people called the Contras. Like, you don't really want to make that kind of stuff clear when you're doing it, because it could end up throwing a lot of stuff off and end up killing the entire plan that you have. So that's what the black budgets are.
Also remember all the black sites that we were operating for a long time. They were shut down about 2 presidencies ago. They were allegedly shut down. Wink, wink. But there were a ton of black sites all over the place, being hosted by countries like Poland and places like that, where the CIA could basically imprison people if they needed to, for whatever reason, sort of like outside of due process to an extent, and also simply gather intelligence and use it as a post to go to if they were doing foreign operations in countries overseas. And I'm not really sure how many of those still operate or not. We were never really clear on the exact number. There were some leaks that came out that sort of indicated how many there were, which apparently there were a lot. But I would say pretty much every country does that. And obviously they have to have a black budget to operate those, because you can't just say, hey, we're funding this secret site over here in Poland, so let's send some money over. People are going to be like, hey, wait a minute, what? and they're going to go check it out, and you're going to expose the whole site. So it's just common sense. Every country does it.
And that's true. I would have to back that up 100%. And also, someone said CIA is off the chain. I don't know. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one is going to go to Caviar, who says, my American family member is going to Russia soon with his Ukrainian wife, and I told them about the risk, but they don't listen or care. And what do you think about their decision? That is shocking to hear, honestly, Caviar. I'm having a hard time. If this is serious, that is a terrible idea. The two worst nationalities going to Russia, American and Ukrainian, a terrible idea. I'm not sure why they would want to do that, or if you know the reason why they'd want to do that, but that does not sound good. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that doesn't sound like a good idea at all, especially considering that she's a Ukrainian citizen, or she is Ukrainian. That is a very bad idea. They probably will be hounded or harassed by Russian government officials, either on the municipal level or even on the central level, and so I would generally dissuade them from traveling to Russia at this time. The Department of State generally lists Russia currently as a no-go zone. You do not go to the Russian Federation currently if you have any real sense. And so I would say that is a very, very bad idea. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Lucas Kraft, who says, what would happen if Israel joined NATO, and would Article 5 be triggered immediately and deployed to Palestine?
Israel, I do not believe, can join. Let me see. North of the Tropic of Cancer. Where is the Tropic of Cancer? North of the Tropic of Cancer. One second, that's the equator. I'm looking for the Tropic of Cancer. The Tropic of Cancer. Hang on. Here we go. Yeah, the Tropic of Cancer. That's what we're looking for. I need to find that on the map. Hang on. So they are north of the Tropic of Cancer. So technically they could join. You could actually make Israel a member of NATO. It would be really hard, but let's just say they did. If they got attacked by Hezbollah or Hamas, that actually would be a possible Article 5 trigger in NATO. So yes, NATO forces would arrive in the area and would support Israeli operations fighting against Hamas and Hezbollah in Lebanon and also within Palestine as well. So technically, yes, they would. And I hope that does address that question fairly well. And thank you so much for asking a really interesting question, because I actually didn't know that the Tropic of Cancer was that down low on the Earth, closer to the equator. I actually thought it was much farther north. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Barry Badgerman said, they aren't in the Atlantic, bruh. Well, Turkey isn't either. Neither is Bulgaria or Romania or Poland or the Baltic states or Finland or Sweden, really, for that matter. Or the Netherlands and Belgium, because they're actually in the North Sea, not the Atlantic Ocean. Or Hungary or the Czech Republic. I mean, they aren't even near a body of water. Or Slovakia. Or Croatia, or Slovenia, or Italy, or, let's see, who else? Greece, or North Macedonia. Really everyone. Like, pretty much everyone in NATO isn't on the Atlantic Ocean. Very few of them are. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat, or excuse me, not our super chat, our next live chat question is going to go to Peace with the War, who says, why does the U.S. let the Houthis mess with shipping, hamper Israel from taking care of Hamas, and not give Ukraine what they need to win the war?
Interesting question. Interesting question. Let me go and make sure. There we go. There it is. Why is the U.S. let... I don't know. That's the best thing I can say, because to get into that answer will require us to get into things that we cannot talk about on air. But we just don't. I mean, I'm going to actually have to leave it at that, because any comment beyond that would start to get pretty deep into some things that have ended up becoming a little bit of a domestic political issue. But with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can, although I'm heavily gagging myself on that answer. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Poison Xbox. And I hope your Xbox gets better soon.
Oh, no.
He said, how long would it take for Ukraine to regain all their territories after a Russian economic collapse?
it most likely would be within a month or two that they would regain all of their territories, because the Russians suffered an economic collapse. The government would most likely not be able to pay a lot of their soldiers in the Russian Federation's armed forces, which means that either they would probably stop paying a lot of the combat troops inside of Ukraine, or they'd stop paying the logistics guys behind the lines and try and prioritize the combat guys. Either way, one or another part of a critical element of the Russian army will end up not being paid, which means that they will refuse to work. And so going off of that, the Russian army would start to collapse, and the Ukrainians would be able to easily push forward and regain pretty much all of their lost ground at that point. And the Russians would be too far gone to really pay attention to that or really change the fact that that is happening. So I would say probably within just a few months of an economic collapse, Ukraine would probably have regained all of its pre-1991 borders and territory. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ryan Peacock, who says, do you think that other nations will try to place restrictions on China due to their lack of safety for falling unused booster rockets on civilian areas?
I would say, on China, we'll try and place restrictions. I don't know what specific restrictions you're talking about. Possibly space agency restrictions, but all of that's internalized within China. So I'd actually have to say that really no restrictions will probably come of this, because this isn't actually the first time that this has happened. One other time, they attempted to launch a satellite into orbit, and the rocket ended up landing on a village and killing several hundred people in the explosion that resulted from the fuel blowing up, like we saw on the clip from today, and nothing really came out of that. So I'm assuming that this will probably be completely ignored. It was just a crazy incident, and that was that. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And a very interesting question, Ryan Peacock. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Craig Savarese. He says, what are your thoughts on the possibility of South Korea reversing their policy on providing Ukraine with lethal military aid, and from their reverse engineered Paladin SP, MLRS, etc.?
I would have to say that generally, my opinion is that the South Koreans will probably start to reverse their idea on Ukraine military support if the North Koreans continue to do what they do and the Russians continue to provide support to them. I have a feeling that South Korean support is actually very close around the corner. And so, in my opinion, it probably will not be that long. The thing is, though, is that they're probably not going to provide it directly from South Korea. They may actually use Hyundai Rotem, which is being set up with factories inside of Poland, to manufacture and ship the equipment not just to Poland, but also across the border into Ukraine as well, making sure that those factories are able to have a substantial expansion, that South Korean industrial base, the South Korean industrial base and its abilities are expanded and diversified abroad. And not only that, it will greatly reduce the complications in their logistics and supply lines trying to transport all of those raw materials and equipment to Ukraine. Instead, it's all just manufactured in Poland and then shipped right across the border. But I think that it will not be that long until we see that. Maybe another month, given the way that the Koreas are going right now. They may get tense enough that the South Koreans would actually start to provide military support to Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are actually on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Eric Wen. He said, with Russia mining up the North Sea, do you think that something like Operation Praying Mantis could happen?
Operation Praying Mantis probably would not happen against the Russian Federation, considering that they're a nuclear power, so it usually ends up resulting in a lot more dangerous outcomes conducting the same kind of actions that we did against Iran in Operation Praying Mantis. I would say that we're probably not going to see a Praying Mantis kind of an operation, and we're not entirely sure if those harbors and ports are being mined yet. They'll probably be sending out minesweepers to find out, and if they find proof of mines, then we will know that they did mine those ports. But for now, it's more of a rumor than anything. We'll be trying to find out if that's true. If it is true, however, the response will be quite severe, because it will be showing that the Russians were planning on actually deliberately destroying NATO submarines before a conflict had even began, which could have started one immediately once the submarine was blown up by a mine and possibly sunk. So going off of that, I would say that I generally would believe that there wouldn't be a lot in Matthew's distracting me, because the whole entire thing turned red for a second. I was like, bro, is this communist or something? But anyways, I would generally say that I don't think we're going to see an Operation Praying Mantis if mines were actually placed. It'll be a very tense standoff, but not an Operation Praying Mantis. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Aiden, who says, on a percentage scale of 0 to 100, how close are we to World War III? And what Aiden's asking here, he's asking like those atomic scientists like to do. They like to go over there and play with that big old like artificial clock to say, oh, look, we're all about to die now. Oh, no, not now. It's like, but really, though, if we're crystal balling here, how close are we to World War III? In my opinion, and the Enforcer will give his opinion in just a moment, I would say 100 being the most likely, I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 to 70. That's my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in terms of World War happening, is always so uncertain to be able to crystal ball incredibly well. And everyone knows that I've always said that forever. And I really don't like crystal balling because the chances of getting it wrong is so much greater than ever getting it right. But if I was to tell y'all something, I would say that we are closer to a world war now than we have been since World War II, in my opinion. Things are looking very tense around most areas of the world. It's looking a lot like the precursors to World War II in most regards and most forms, with the rise of authoritarian and extremist governments taking desperate actions to ensure themselves power and also possible prosperity in the future. It is a very uncertain and dangerous time around the world, and for that reason, World War now is probably closer than it's ever been. But I do think that with strong leadership, a strong armed force, and an ability to be able to see in the big term and the long-term picture, we will be able to conduct diplomatic actions that will generally avoid war without going into the realm of appeasement. That would be my general belief on what the world is looking like in the future, but I will say, while I don't believe that I can give a percentage of certainty on a world war breaking out, I can say that it seems a lot closer now than it ever has been in recent history. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say, it has been an absolutely unbelievable stream. We have been able to raise $5.6 thousand, exactly $5,581 in support of Nova Ukraine. An absolutely unbelievable amount, and truly incredible to see that we were able to get that much raised for such an amazing nonprofit. Not only that, but 8.7 thousand people were here at the peak of the show tonight, and over the course of the stream, 69,000 people, nice, have watched this stream from the very beginning. We are, of course, entirely honored and greatly privileged and very humbled to know that so many of y'all choose this channel to be your primary source of news each and every single day. If y'all did enjoy tonight and you're brand new, please make sure to subscribe. We have gotten up to 234,930 subscribers, meaning that we have gained 1.1 thousand subscribers just over the past 24 hours. If you would like to be one of those people that becomes the 235th thousandth subscriber of this channel, please, by all means, hit that subscribe button. We would love to see this channel hit 235,000 subscribers. That would be absolutely amazing. Also, if you would like to help this stream to reach more people, hit that like button. And of course, one more thing, don't forget to tell your friends about this channel. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. Thank you for such a successful fundraiser. And with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, good night, folks. Like the Enforcer said, a huge shout out to everybody tonight for raising such a tremendous amount of money for a great charity, which will obviously help Ukraine in a very direct way. And once again, thank you all for watching. Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava. And that's going to be all for tonight, and we'll see you all on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And also, if there's enough news to cover, midday tomorrow, that'll be the Enforcer's video for the Short War video. So with that, thank you all, and good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.